This may look like a river. It's not. It's the ocean. This is how fast the tide moves as it leaves Taunton Bay and heads back out to sea as the tide is dropping. It's a place called Tidal Falls, a reversing falls, in Sullivan. Hi, I'm Bob Duchesne. A little while ago, somebody asked me, how do you bird down east in the winter? This is how. First question, what is down east? For most of Boston, they would say all of Maine is down east. For Mainers, they might say where the accent changes to that thick down east accent you hear in movies. That could be as low as Stonington along the coast, perhaps even lower than that. But for most Mainers, they would probably say north of Bar Harbor, north of the mainland portion of Mount Desert Island, Acadia National Park. So we'll say it starts here. Typically you would find Eiders here just about year-round. Long-tailed ducks, black guillemots, common loons, they would come in here. This was the last sardine cannery in the United States. Prospect Harbor itself is very good for ducks, and so you'll often find common eider. All three Scoter varieties are possible. Long-tailed duck, horned and redneck grebe, black guillemots, buffleheads, they all tend to come into this harbor. This is Pigeon Hill Bay. It's in Steuben. It's on the way down to the Petite Banane National Wildlife Refuge. This is a particularly good piece of water because it's very sheltered in here and the diving ducks really come in here quite a bit. So you are going to see redneck grebes and you're going to see horned grebes and buffleheads and long-tailed ducks. Probably Scoters in here. I usually see Scoters. Common loons, they have red-throated loons in here now and then. So it's always a good stop in winter. One of the most impressive things about this spot is that you get a good look at Petite Banane Island. That's the puffin colony out there, although all the puffins are scattered all over the ocean by now. Roque Bluff State Park. This is definitely one of the best places to bird the Downeast area year-round. In winter, it's particularly full of sea ducks. Again, this is another one of those big bays that is really shielded from prevailing winds. So the ducks tend to gather in here, and you'll get all three Scoter species in here. Red-breasted Mergansers, long-tailed ducks, buffleheads, lots of common loons. So all that gathers right here off the beach. So if you're doing Roque Bluff State Park, there's essentially 4 areas you have to consider. And the first is the Half Moon Beach area itself. The second place to look at Roque Bluff State Park is the pond behind the beach, just on the other side of the road. It's a big freshwater pond, which really attracts an awful lot of wildlife. The third spot is Shoppy Point. If you go past Roque Bluff State Park, for just another mile, you end up at a dead end and a boat ramp. There's also a dock here, a pier. Walk out on that. It's okay. It's publicly accessible, just you're at your own risk. The ducks here can be quite interesting. It tends to get a lot of Scoters in this spot, a lot of long-tailed ducks. I don't think I've seen many places in Maine that have more black guillemots than this location right here. And you get your usual common loons and even red-throated loons and all the grebes off this spot as well. And the fourth spot at Roque Bluff State Park comes before you even get to the park. Just as you're getting into the little village center approaching Roque Bluff State Park, there's a left turn with a chapel on the right, volunteer fire station on the left. It's called Johnson Cove Road. Just go down the hill and around the corner and there's a bridge, and there's a pretty big wetland behind the road, and then the ocean side's pretty good too. I'm catching it at a low tide, so there's a lot of ducks that are way out there. But at higher tides, they tend to be pretty close, and you'll catch a lot of red-breasted Mergansers and the usual diving ducks in this spot. The gulls like to roost on some of these ledge rocks, and so that makes it very interesting too. As you're coming up the Maine coast, you're going to face 2 choices once you get to Machias. You can go north, right up Route 1 and hurry up to Cobscook Bay in the Lubec area, or you can take the Bold Coast, Route 191 that goes through Cutler and up that way. The advantage of going this way is you get several looks into the ocean, and the best look is right here at Little Machias Bay. It's another one of those sheltered bays where a lot of the ducks will congregate, so you'll see in the distance lots of Scoters, Eiders, loons, lots of long-tailed ducks. All the usual ducks are in here, and often in big numbers. Now, they can be a little distant because it's a pretty big bay, but it's a great place to look any time at all in winter. And across this bay, the world's largest, most powerful, very low-frequency radio array. Well, this is it. If you're going to bird down east in winter, you have got to come to Buffleheads State Park. The view from this iconic lighthouse, Across to the Grand Manan is spectacular, and there's so much tide through here that the food bubbles up, and a lot of the waterfowl will gather right in this general area. So you have a pretty good chance of seeing some awesome birds. This is Sail Rock, the easternmost point in the continental United States. In this spot, year-round, you have a pretty good chance of getting alcids. There's always black guillemots here. There's regularly razorbills, and every now and then you can get a common murre. In fact, there was one out here just a moment ago. This channel is particularly good about 2 hours before or after high tide, when the tide is really surging through. Some of the birds will come in here and start to forage in that spot. Bunch of northern gannets, a bunch of black-legged kittiwakes out there. Flyby of 3 razorbills, but that's a lousy look. They're way distant. And I didn't realize it at first, but with those black-legged kittiwakes, there's a whole bunch of Bonaparte skulls too. This is South Lubec Sandflats, or Sandbar. I've seen it both ways. In late summer, this is a spectacular place for shorebirding. All year round, it's a good place to look for ducks. Scoters, all 3 varieties, can be here all summer. It's one of those few places in Maine where you can find them in all seasons, especially, of course, in winter. You get a pretty big vista from this beach. Quoddy State Park around the corner, across the channel, New Brunswick's Campobello. Now, if the sea ducks choose to be the other side of the channel, you're going to need a spotting scope to see anything. But at higher tides, they tend to be closer to shore, so time it. There's a lot of eagles around here. As you're coming from Lubec, heading towards South Lubec Sandflats and Quoddy State Park, there's a big open bay on the left-hand side of the road, not far from the intersection. It's all shallow in here, and at higher tides, because it's easy to feed, you'll see a lot of sea ducks. Can sometimes be rather close. All 3 scoters are possible, and all the usual diving ducks in the area. As you're driving into downtown Lubec, look for an historical museum on the left side of the road, next to a big cove. Officially, this is Johnson Cove. Unofficially, we call it Scoter Hole, because the odds of finding scoters in here, even year-round, are pretty good. All 3 species can be in here, and you can expect the usual diving ducks like long-tailed ducks, buffleheads. Plenty of common loons all year long in this cove. It's Johnson Cove on the way into Lubec. As you're coming into downtown Lubec, heading for Campobello over the International Bridge, there's a small right turn just before you get to the American Customs side of the border. That's on Pleasant Street, and at the end of this dead end is Maury Beach. It's kind of hidden, but it opens up into the big expanse between South Lubec Sandflats and Campobello, with a good look at the Sparkplug Lighthouse out there. This is a good place for shorebirds in fall, and in the winter, it's one of those good places to look for scoters. In fact, you can find scoters year-round in here. Eiders are abundant in here year-round.